Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. What if the ground beneath your feet remembered every step you ever took? Not in a metaphorical sense, but a physical one. Imagine a world where gravity wasn't just a constant, indiscriminate force, but a force with a memory. A force that recalled the weight of every object, every person, every raindrop that ever pressed down upon it. For a brief moment, an echo of that pressure would remain, a faint gravitational ghost. You drop your keys, and for a split second after you pick them up, the space they occupied pulls just a tiny bit harder. It's an idea that sounds like science fiction, but what if it were our reality? What if, one day, we woke up to find that the fundamental laws of the universe had subtly, yet profoundly, changed? This isn't just a question of floating objects or strange anomalies. It's a question that would unravel everything we thought we knew about the fabric of spacetime, and it all begins with a simple, unsettling observation. Things just don't fall the way they used to. It started small. So small, in fact, that for months it was dismissed as a collection of unrelated, anecdotal oddities. A coffee mug sliding off a perfectly level countertop in Stockholm. Child's helium balloon in Tokyo inexplicably hovering a foot off the ground for almost 10 seconds before continuing its ascent. In Kyoto, Japan, at the Fushimi Inari Shrine, with its thousands of vermilion torii gates, tourists began to report a strange sensation, a feeling of being pushed gently downhill on the ascent and pulled back on the descent, even on the flat sections of the path. Seismologists noticed it first in the data. Microtremors, the planet's constant hum, were showing bizarre, localized fluctuations that defied geological explanation. They were like phantom earthquakes, focused on areas of immense historical mass. The foundations of ancient pyramids, the bedrock beneath megacities, the deep trenches of the ocean where tectonic plates had ground against each other for millennia. The data was clear, yet impossible. It was as if the Earth itself was developing a geological memory, retaining a faint, gravitational echo of past pressures. This phenomenon, which physicists would later dub mnemonic gravity or gravitational hysteresis, wasn't a weakening or strengthening of the force, but an introduction of a new property. Persistence. When a massive object occupied a point in space, it warped spacetime as Einstein predicted. But now, when the object was removed, spacetime didn't snap back instantly. It retained a shadow of the warp, a residual gravitational indentation that would fade over time. The duration and intensity of this gravity ghost were proportional to two things: the mass of the object and the length of time it had remained stationary. A book left on a table for an hour might leave a gravitational echo lasting only a few seconds, imperceptible to human senses. But a skyscraper, sitting on its foundation for a century, weighing millions of tons, it was creating a permanent, localized gravity well. The first real-world, undeniable consequence manifested in our cities. In New York City, residents in the high-rise apartments of Lower Manhattan started reporting strange plumbing issues. Water wasn't flowing downwards with its usual vigor. Drains were sluggish, toilets required multiple flushes. It was a citywide complaint, initially blamed on aging infrastructure. But the real cause was far more bizarre. The sheer, concentrated mass of the skyscrapers, having stood for decades, had created a subtle but persistent gravitational field. The accumulated gravitational memory of millions of tons of steel and concrete was now strong enough to slightly counteract the Earth's natural pull within its own footprint. Water, simply put, was having a harder time flowing, down, because the very definition of down was being warped by the memory of the buildings themselves. This led to the urban sink effect. Older, denser cities like London, Rome, and Beijing began to experience a measurable increase in localized gravity. The centuries, even millennia, of accumulated mass, of buildings built upon the ruins of older buildings, of countless generations of people walking the same streets, had saturated the very fabric of space. Walking into the historical center of Rome felt like stepping into a slightly heavier world. Tourists would feel inexplicably weary. Objects would fall faster. A simple drop of rain would strike the ancient cobblestones with a fractionally greater impact than it would in the surrounding countryside. Scientists from the Italian National Institute for Geophysics and Volcanology confirmed the anomaly, registering a gravity field in the Roman Forum that was 0.001% stronger than in the suburbs just 10 kilometers away. It was a tiny number, but one that defied the known laws of physics. Transportation was the next system to buckle. High-speed maglev trains, which rely on precise magnetic levitation, began experiencing critical failures. Train traveling from Shanghai to Beijing, a route it had run flawlessly for years, suddenly encountered a gravitational pothole outside Nanjing, an area where a massive, decommissioned factory complex had been demolished a decade prior. The ghost of the factory, a lingering well of gravitational memory, was just strong enough to pull the train downwards by a few millimeters, causing a catastrophic delevitation event at over 400 kilometers per hour. In the skies, the chaos was even greater. Commercial airliners, guided by sophisticated inertial navigation systems that assume a constant gravitational field, started drifting off course. Flight from Los Angeles to Sydney found itself dozens of miles south of its intended flight path, battling a phantom current that pilots couldn't explain. The current was the lingering gravitational wake of the moon, a faint, ethereal river in the sky left over from its passage hours earlier. The sky was no longer a uniform space. It was a tapestry of invisible gravitational peaks and valleys, echoes of past celestial alignments, and the ghosts of every storm and cloud that had ever passed through it. As humanity grappled with collapsing infrastructure and unpredictable physics, the planet itself began to react. The most terrifying manifestation of mnemonic gravity occurred deep within the Earth's crust. Tectonic plates, massive slabs of rock floating on the semi-fluid mantle, have memory in a geological sense, accumulating stress along fault lines over centuries. Now, they had a literal gravitational memory. The San Andreas Fault in California, a place of immense, stored tectonic stress, began to exhibit a frightening new behavior. The billions of tons of rock on either side of the fault had been pressing against each other for eons. This immense, prolonged pressure created a ridge of gravitational memory along the fault line. This ridge acted like a gravitational barrier, making it harder for the plates to slip. Stress that would have normally been released in moderate, periodic earthquakes was now being trapped, held in place by the ghost of its own pressure. Seismologists watched their instruments in horror, realizing that the fault was now accumulating stress far beyond its theoretical breaking point. It was building towards a single, cataclysmic release, a hyperquake of unprecedented magnitude. The natural world was being rewritten. The Amazon rainforest, the lungs of the planet, began to suffer. The immense, collective weight of the rainforest over millennia had created a subtle, continent-wide gravity well. This well had always helped to attract moisture-laden air from the Atlantic, contributing to the region's high rainfall. But now, as deforestation accelerated, the ghost of the forest remained. The gravitational memory lingered, even as the trees disappeared. This created a paradoxical and disastrous situation. Lingering gravity well continued to pull in moist air, but without the trees to anchor the soil and transpire moisture back into the atmosphere, the result was catastrophic flooding and soil erosion on a biblical scale. The memory of the forest was, in a cruel twist of irony, drowning the very land where it once stood. The planet's climate and geological systems, all predicated on a stable, predictable gravitational constant, were spiraling into a chaotic feedback loop. In the hallowed halls of CERN and Fermilab, the world's greatest minds scrambled for answers. The standard model of particle physics, our most complete description of the universe's fundamental forces, had no room for gravitational memory. It was as if the rulebook had been secretly rewritten. The leading theory centered on the graviton, the hypothetical quantum particle that mediates the gravitational force. Theorists proposed that gravitons were not simple, massless particles as long believed. Instead, they possessed a previously undetected property, a kind of informational stickiness. They were interacting with the Higgs field in a new, complex way, causing spacetime to retain an imprint of mass. Experiments were frantically designed. At the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, scientists reanalyzed their data, searching for not just the chirp of black holes merging, but a reverb, a faint, lingering gravitational echo after the main event. And they found it. A nearly imperceptible signal, a gravitational ringing that persisted for minutes after the initial wave had passed, hidden in the noise of decades of data. The proof was terrifying. Mnemonic gravity wasn't a localized anomaly. It was a new, fundamental law of the cosmos. Society fractured under the strain. A new kind of real estate market emerged, where gravitational stability was the most prized asset. Geologically young, sparsely populated areas, free from the weight of history and mass, became havens for the wealthy. Ancient cities, once centers of culture and power, became dangerous, unpredictable gravity traps. A new Luddite movement arose, arguing for demassing, the systematic demolition of large structures to erase their gravitational memory and restore balance. They clashed violently with preservationists who argued that destroying our history was too high a price to pay. New religions formed, worshipping the Earth's memory and performing rituals to appease the ghosts of the ground. Conspiracy theories flourished, with many believing mnemonic gravity was not a natural phenomenon at all, but a consequence of some secret, world-altering experiment gone horribly wrong. The very concept of permanence became a source of fear. To build something that would last for centuries was no longer a legacy. It was a gravitational curse upon future generations. The longest-term implications, however, were astronomical. Our solar system is a delicate, clockwork mechanism balanced by gravity for billions of years. Mnemonic gravity threw a wrench into those celestial gears. The orbits of planets are not perfect circles. They are ellipses, meaning planets spend more time at certain points in their orbits than others. Jupiter, the giant of our solar system, spends more time at its aphelion, its farthest point from the sun. This extended duration began to carve a faint but permanent gravitational groove in its orbital path. Over centuries, this groove grew deeper, subtly altering Jupiter's orbit, pulling it farther from the sun. This tiny change had a cascading effect, tugging on the orbits of Saturn, Mars, and most critically, the asteroid belt. The stable, predictable orbits of millions of asteroids began to decay. The celestial shooting gallery that is our solar system was being re-aimed, with Earth increasingly in the crosshairs. And looking further out, into the deep cosmos, the implications were even more staggering. Galaxies like our own Milky Way are held together by the gravitational pull of a supermassive black hole at the center, and allegedly, a vast halo of dark matter. But with mnemonic gravity, another factor came into play. The spiral arms of the galaxy, where stars are more densely concentrated, were constantly refreshing a gravitational memory. This created a self-reinforcing structure, a gravitational scaffold that made the spiral arms more stable and gravitationally dominant than they should have been. The universe, it turned out, had a bias towards its own existing structures. It remembered where matter had been and was predisposed to put more matter there. Star formation, galaxy evolution, the grand cosmic web itself, all of it was governed not just by where mass was, but by where it had been. The past was no longer just a memory. It was an active, physical force, shaping the present and dictating the future of the cosmos. Our entire understanding of cosmic history, from the Big Bang to the ultimate fate of the universe, was built on a foundation of sand. The universe didn't just have laws, it had habits. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting videos. For humanity, the final realization was that we were living not just in a physical world, but in a historical one, haunted by the literal ghosts of everything that had ever been.